Hi everyone! Using J.S. Bach's organ fugue BWV 547, in this video I'll be looking at the second approach composers use for subject entries after a fugue's exposition. Unlike the first approach, in which the subject structure introduced during the exposition is essentially retained and simply transposed to any new key, using the second approach, for many or all of a fugue's later entries, the composer manipulates the subject's contour, underlying progression, and scale degree relationships in all keys to which the work moves. As used through the exposition entries, this fugue's tonal subject's contour is constructed around a stepwise ascent, which in the subject ascends from the notes C to G, the first and fifth degrees in C major, and includes a raised fourth degree tonicizing the dominant, and in the answer ascends from the notes G to C, C major's fifth and first degrees. During the exposition then, melodically the subject-answer pair present a complete move from C major's first to fifth degree and a return to the first, and harmonically they typically present a move from C major's tonic through secondary harmony to its dominant and a return to the tonic. Exceptions to this may be found, however, such as here, where rather than sounding the root note of tonic harmony, the final C note of this answer entry sounds as the seventh of secondary D dominant seventh harmony moving to C major's dominant. Taken together, the subject's final 4/8 notes outline secondary F sharp half diminished seventh harmony, which resolves to C major's dominant, and the answer's 4/8 notes outline C major's own leading note B half diminished seventh harmony, which moves to the tonic. As we'll see, however, Bach typically harmonizes these eighth notes in both the subject and answer using more than one harmony. For example, here C major's first inversion supertonic seventh chord moves to first inversion B diminished leading note harmony. Although this is a 5-part fugue, Bach refrains from the typical procedure of introducing each part during the exposition, with the final part and the pedals not entering until later. After the exposition's conclusion, Bach here again introduces the subject-answer pair, which behaves as before. This subject entry, however, melodically ascends from the note G to D, suggesting the framing first and fifth degrees of G major or minor, but whose contour outlines an ascent from the fourth to first degrees of D minor. Bach here also harmonizes this entry in D minor, briefly tonicizing C major's supertonic. The following answer entry is melodically and harmonically treated as in the exposition and outlines an ascent from the fifth to first degrees of C major. Melodically, this subject entry also behaves as the entries in the exposition, but is essentially harmonized in G major. This answer entry also essentially behaves as before, but includes secondary chords to C major's subdominant. And this subject entry is essentially harmonized in G major. The following answer entry lacks its final note and moves from B to D, here harmonized partially in E minor and A minor. The expected final E, which together with the initial B would sound in E minor as the fifth and first degrees and in A minor as the second and fifth degrees, is included in the top part and begins another answer entry, this time moving from E to A, the fifth and first degrees in A minor. This subject entry ascends from the notes F to C, which are here partially harmonized in F major and C major. Bach here shortens the initial note using an eighth instead of the typical quarter note. This inverted subject entry moves between the notes G and C, the fifth and first degrees in C major, and is harmonized in that key, concluding here on the third degree of C major's submediant. The final C note is also the initial note of another inverted subject entry, here melodically moving between the notes C and F, suggesting the framing fifth and first degrees of F major, but here sounding as the lowered seventh and third degrees in D minor, the key in which it's harmonized. This inverted subject entry moves between the notes D and G, the framing fifth and first degrees of G major, and is harmonized in that key. And here another inverted subject entry moves between the notes G and C, the fifth and first degrees of C major, the key in which it's harmonized. Despite Bach harmonizing these chords in different keys, from here the chord harmonizing the initial note of each inverted entry can be heard as outlining the root notes of a 6-2-5-1 progression in C major. Here an inverted subject entry moves in stretto with an answer entry. Both move between the notes E and A, the fifth and first degrees of A minor, and are harmonized in that key. The final A of the answer entry, however, is harmonized as an A major chord, which also sounds as the dominant of D minor, the key harmonizing the following entries. As with the previous A minor entries, Bach combines an inverted subject entry in the lower part and answer entry in the upper, which here both move between the notes A and D, the fifth and first degrees of D minor. Here Bach reverses the order of entries using the subject entry in the lower part and the inverted answer entry in the upper. Both of these entries move between the notes D and A, again suggesting the first and fifth degrees of D minor. Here, however, while part of the subject entry is harmonized in that key, its final notes and the entire inverted answer entry are harmonized in A minor. The framing notes here therefore move between the fourth and first degrees of that key. The notes A and D again frame this inverted subject entry, but are here essentially harmonized in G minor, sounding therefore as the second and fifth degrees in that key. The following inverted subject entry moving between the notes D and G, suggesting the framing fifth and first degrees of G minor or major, are here harmonized in C minor. And this inverted subject entry moving between the notes G and C is harmonized in F minor, as is the following answer entry. The following entries, one an answer entry moving between the notes G and C, and the other a subject entry moving between C and G, are both essentially harmonized in the key of C minor. This answer entry moves and is harmonized as in the exposition, and partially overlaps with the initial entry in the pedals, which is an augmented subject entry in C major. The final note of this entry becomes the initial note of an augmented answer entry, also in C. Above these entries, the stretto entries here suggest the key of G major, and here secondary chords to C major's subdominant. The augmented answer entry's final note is also harmonized with a C minor chord. The shape of these entries also has been modified, with this inverted answer entry framed by the notes A and F sharp, this one E and B, and this one D and A. None of these framing notes, however, sound as the first and fifth of a key, and are instead sometimes the first, third, or fifth degrees of the underlying harmonies. These subject entries also have altered contours and are framed by the notes F and B, the tritone of C major, but are harmonized in several keys. This inverted augmented subject entry, however, moves normally and is essentially harmonized in C major. And this inverted subject entry is framed by the notes C and F sharp, the tritone of G major, but is essentially harmonized in C minor. Over the beginning of the work's concluding tonic pedal, Bach again uses stretto entries all harmonized in C major. The first two are inverted subject entries moving between the notes C and F, C major's first and fourth degrees. This answer entry moves as in the exposition between C major's fifth and first degrees, and this subject entry moves between C major's first and fifth degrees. Here, possibly to avoid using root position G dominant harmony too close to the final cadence, Bach alters the first note of this answer entry. It still, however, essentially moves as in the exposition between the fifth and first degrees of C major to conclude over tonic harmony. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.